Hey, folks.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to let people stream in. I know there are like 13 or 14,000 people registered for this one, so there are a lot, and we'll get into it soon.
Everybody.
You have come to What's the Plan? Hi from Long Beach.
California is first.
Excellent. If we look tired, it's because we are, because our 2-year-old and 4-year-olds are both have fevers now and are both waking up a lot. But we're here. We're here for What's the Plan. We have not missed one. They are doing better, actually. They were very
Pretty
high.
high spirits,
They were very
actually.
high spirits this morning, I will say.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. We've got people streaming in. Let us know where you're coming from. What city? If you're part of an Indivisible group, please let us know. There are a lot of y'all out there.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Let's see. We got Waltham, Massachusetts, Briarcliff, New Jersey City, New Orleans, Fairfax, Marina. It's going too fast. Madison.
We've hit escape velocity.
Ah,
We got Dallas, San Diego, Charlotte.
I always feel bad because the things that I can't get are the new places that go by. It's going so fast. All right. Let's see.
Berkeley,
Berkeley, Jacksonville, Minden,
Wyndham,
Vermont, Palm
Colusa, California, Bozeman,
Coast,
Montana, Chicago, Sandy, Utah,
Arlington, Washington,
Leavenworth,
Port Angeles,
Evanston, Spokane, Tulsa,
Indianapolis,
Pomona. Your sister went to
Toledo.
Pomona. Uh, I know we've got a jam-packed schedule. I know people are still joining. That's how it goes. Why don't we get into it, Leah?
Let's
Yeah?
let's kick it off.
Let's jump into it. Hi, everybody. It is great to be here. It's been a while since we've done full-on intros. Leah, what if we did some intros just to let people know where we're coming from? I'm Ezra.
Leah.
And we're the co-founders, co-executive directors of Indivisible National. We both, I'll just say, I used to work on Capitol Hill. Don't hold that against me. We try to use our inside knowledge of how Congress works to help people actually push members of Congress. And my background's in anti-poverty policy and did a lot of advocacy work before Donald Trump got elected, and then found myself with Leah trying to help people advocate for themselves.
My background is in human trafficking policy and advocacy. When I wasn't on the Hill, I was working on trafficking work or anti-trafficking work.
That's right. And we are here to talk about how we save democracy, Leah. Is that right?
That's right.
That's the plan. So what we do on What's the Plan is we try to go over a bit of the topics of the day and welcome the new indivisible groups into this movement because it turns out 8 months in, past the election, there are still new indivisible groups that are joining every single day. And that gives me hope because that's what we need in this moment. What we know from the experts in authoritarianism is that there is not a solution to creeping authoritarianism, to authoritarian overreach other than normal everyday people organizing around the country. Blue states, red states, purple states, rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas. This is what we need. And so it is good to see new people come in and we try to welcome them in. We roll out the red carpet. So I'm going to ask for your help with your emojis, with your comments. I'm going to go through quickly because we have a lot of comments. I took a smattering of the groups, about 10, just from different states. I try not to duplicate. Welcome them here into this movement because together we are strong and we need more of us together. So Emma from Indivisible Girdwood, Alaska, welcome. I would love to visit Girdwood. It looks gorgeous. We've got Dawn from North Olmsted, Ohio, with Neo Indivisible. This is outside Cleveland. We've got June from Naples, Florida. We've got Linda from Omaha, Nebraska. Like-minded friends, Indivisible in Omaha, Nebraska. Uh, Indivisible, Miami. It's not Miami. Miami, Oklahoma. It's spelled the same way. Brand new. Sarah with Indivisible 51 Movers and Shakers, Leah. 51 Movers and Shakers in San Diego, California. I love it. And then David just registered at Indivisible Littleton in Massachusetts. Gives you a sense. Alaska, Ohio, Florida, Nebraska, Oklahoma, California, Massachusetts. We're everywhere. As we say, we've got friends everywhere, and we're joining up to push back against this authoritarian overreach. Leah, but why are we here today? What's the plan all
Okay.
about?
What's the plan is our weekly time when we come together. We talk about the news of the day. We talk about the overarching strategies and the plans and the campaigns that we're all part of. And we answer your questions live and we just dig in on what's on your mind. This is mostly going to be Q&A, primarily live, occasionally submitted in advance. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box or in the Q&A box at the toolbar on the bottom of your screen. That's where we're going to be pulling the questions. We're taking from the top primarily, so the top most voted questions. So vote with the little thumbs up thing if you have a question you want to see answered. And if you're from an Indivisible group, please let us know at the start of your question so that we can try to intersperse some of those and make sure that we're getting some questions directly from people who are organizing locally all over the place. This will be recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who registered. You can watch it as many times as you want. We will post links in the chat. So if you miss a link in the chat because it is moving too quickly, this has happened before. we will be following up with all of the links that we post and making sure you get those. Now, final note on respect and support for each other. We are covering really, really heavy stuff. We are living through really, really heavy stuff. We want to keep the chat box constructive and supportive and collaborative. We are going to have disagreements about tactics and strategies in the time ahead. That's okay. What we want to do collectively is stay focused on the bigger good and hold each other up, because that is how we're going to win together.
That's right. That's the plan. So one thing that we do after most of these calls is a survey to you to check in on some strategy, some tactics, some approach that we're taking. And we did that in the last one. We were asking specifically about building up for the next major national mobilization. What would be helpful from Indivisible as we consider what worked for hands off, what worked for May Day, what worked for No King's Day, what worked for the John Lewis Day, Good Trouble Lives On. Just want to reflect back to y'all. We got a ton of responses. Far and away, the top two things that y'all requested were one, partner organization support. So looking to reach out to other partner organizations who could help you in your indivisible groups or however you're organizing to bring more people out. So heard loud and clear. Almost 2/3 of you wrote back that. And about half of you wrote back more support in recruitment. And that's I will say we scaled up support for recruitment a fair amount for No King's Day, and I was really happy about that. We invested a fair amount of effort, time, energy, money into investing into new media for recruitment. But I hear that, we hear that. We are going to be thinking about this as we move into the next big national mobilization. So partner support and recruitment were way up there just to give some visibility. There was some interest in more time for planning, some interest in more training, some interest in funding, but far and away the big things were recruitment and partner organization support. So we will take this in. Thank you for providing your feedback. That is helpful. We do read the responses, and then we bring this back to the team and say, hey, this is what's bubbling up. So thank you. And I want to flag, we're going to do a new survey right after this call, and I would really, again, appreciate y'all filling out. Again, it is helpful for us because we're trying to make these spaces helpful. This is going to be a bit more meta. It's about this space specifically. We've had a lot, or a little bit of experimentation. We had, Leah and I did slides for the 1 Million Rising to preview the training that was coming up a couple weeks ago. And then last week, Erica Chenoweth of 3.5% fame, the expert in authoritarianism, she came and joined us. If you weren't there, I thought it went great. She was the first guest that we've ever had before. So we're trying, they're their first guest that we've ever had before. So we're trying new stuff right now. And I want to know if it's working out. Did you like hearing from Erica Chenoweth? Did you like us presenting on slides? Do you want less of this, us talking to you and just diving into the discussion? That's okay. We accept and welcome critical feedback. So please take a look at the survey. Let us know your thoughts. We'll keep on adjusting and trying to build this as we go forward. With that, Leah, should we get into the news of the day?
Let's talk.
Okay, so I was just talking. I'm going to hand this off to Leah for practical next steps next, but we've been talking a lot about authoritarian breakthrough. That is what we have been doing for the last several weeks. And authoritarian breakthrough is not just the passage of bad bills. Look, that's part of it. That is part of it. But it's beyond that. It's an attempt to bully institutions into submission so that the would-be authoritarian can just concentrate power. That means focusing, and we've said this a lot, and forgive me, but I'm going to keep on saying it, is the threats against media institutions, against businesses, against universities, against law firms. This is outside the norm of the normal push and pull of American politics. It's something new. It's something scary, and that's why we're focused on it. I came here prepared to talk about CBS News. That's what I thought I was going to focus on. But we have two examples now in the last several days. One is CBS, and one is Columbia University, the news breaking in the last 24 hours. These are complex cases, but I think it's important for us to get acquainted with them because when capitulation happens at such a high level, we need to understand what it looks like so we can talk about how we push back. So I'm going to cover both briefly, and then Leah's going to talk about what are we doing about it? How are we thinking about this? For CBS, timeline is this. Starting last year in September, Paramount, which is the owner of CBS News, they and Skydance Media filed a multi-billion-dollar merger paperwork with the FCC. The FCC can accept or reject this. The next month, 60 Minutes, which runs on CBS, airs an interview with Kamala Harris, who was running for president at the time, as we all remember. Later that month, Trump says, didn't like that interview. We're going to sue CBS for $10 billion. Then,
which is already bananas, just to be clear.
Which is bananas. It's baseless. It's a spurious lawsuit. It should be just laughed out of the courtroom. But Trump wins the election. He's inaugurated. And then the next month, Trump doesn't drop the lawsuit. He increases the claims against CBS Paramount by $10 billion, up to $20 billion. And he says FCC should pull CBS's licenses. That's what he, President of the United States, chooses to spend his time on. A couple months after that, in April, 60 Minutes' longtime executive producer, Bill Owens, been on board for a really long time, resigns, saying that there's management pressure that is infringing on his journalistic independence. The next month after that, this is May of this year, CBS's president resigns for the same reason. A couple months after that, in July, that's this month, we're fast forwarding to present day, Paramount announces a $16 million payout, a cash settlement to Trump to settle this bullshit lawsuit. Then a little bit after that, on the Late Show, Colbert says that the payout is a quote, big fat bribe. That's what Colbert says. And then coincidentally, it's amazing how these coincidences happen. Coincidentally, 3 days after Colbert says that, CBS announces the Late Show is being canceled. That's the timeline. Now, CBS says that this was a financial decision, Leah, that canceling the top-rated Late Show for 9 seasons was a financial decision. And I'm sorry, that it smells like bullshit to me. That's what it smells like. Once you pay a $16 million bribe to Trump to grease the wheels for your multi-billion-dollar merger, you lose the benefit of the doubt. That's capitulation number one. That's capitulation number one. But then yesterday, news broke of big capitulation number two. This is Columbia University that announced a $221 million settlement with Trump. Again, I'm going to go through the timeline quickly just so we're following the wheels coming off of this bus and we all understand what happened. Leah, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. March 2025, this year, Trump, as one of his first acts of president, freezes about $400 million in Columbia's federal research grants. And he's claiming that this is response to anti-Semitism. He has been weaponizing anti-Semitism to engage in this authoritarian behavior for quite some time. That's March. In May, there were these big pro-Palestine protests at Columbia. And in response to that, the university starts opening these disciplinary cases. So that's May, a couple months ago. In June, the Department of Education, answering to Donald Trump, sends a letter to Columbia's accreditor stating that Columbia is in violation of federal anti-discrimination law and therefore fails to meet the standards for accreditation. This is nuclear. I think we really need to underline this. I'm not a higher education expert. I had to talk to folks who are to understand exactly how outside the norm this is. This is kind of the equivalent of saying, nice university you got there. Be a real shame if something happened to it. I mean, this is big. This is in June. In July, apropos of nothing else, Columbia says we are sanctioning nearly 80 students, and this is suspensions for 1 to 3 years, expulsions, even revoking degrees. This is also extreme for the university. This is outside the norms of Columbia's standards or their history. Like multi-year suspensions, revoking already awarded degrees. This is very far end of the disciplinary spectrum, very rarely used. Some historical context, my dad was at Columbia in 1968 when they were occupying buildings. About 30 students in 1968 for those famous occupations were suspended. Not expelled, suspended, 30 students. Far, far broader disruptions in Columbia in 1968, and 30 students were suspended. That was this week, earlier this week. Then the next day, such coincidence, right, Leah? The next day we hear that Columbia has announced this $221 million settlement. $200 million over to the feds, $21 million to the EOC to restore most of these frozen funds that Trump was holding hostage. But it's not just the money, y'all. It is not just the money. They also have to submit to an independent monitor who reports to the federal government. The feds get to review the Middle East curriculum, and the feds maintain the snapback leverage, which means at any point they can say, we don't think Columbia is really following through. We need more. So this is just textbook capitulation to an authoritarian. It is textbook. And I think nothing sums up for me what is going on here for Columbia than the words of the president of Columbia University. I read them last night in the New York Times and my jaw dropped. She said, direct quote, ultimately, we had to make the decision that was right. That was the right decision for Columbia. Ultimately, we had to make the decision that was the right decision for Columbia. Ultimately, CBS had to make the decision that was right for CBS. Ultimately, Paramount had to make the decision that was right for Paramount. Ultimately, Paul Weiss Law Firm had to make the decision that was right for Paul Weiss Law Firm. Ultimately, native-born Americans had to make the decision that was right for native-born Americans. You can see the logic. Ultimately, this logic is the logic that cowards use to take us down the path of fascism. That's ultimately where this leads. And this is how authoritarians bully weak leaders into submission. Fighting back is risky, so it's better just to prioritize your own self-preservation, your own short-term gain. That is the smart move that a university president brags about to the New York Times when they buckle to these fascists. So, Leah, we're seeing this in real time. Massive his institutions buckling to this pressure. So what on earth do we do about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you joined us for part one of 1 Million Rising, you've got a beginning of where we're going with this. We are in this moment of authoritarian breakthrough. That is a period where the authoritarian is sprinting to consolidate control over their formal political power, but also over other alternate institutions that either are going along with them, either enabling them or are pushing back. And we think it's really important in this moment to recognize that, yes, there's Congress, and we're going to do that congressional advocacy. We are good at that. Yes, there are elections. We are going to throw in for elections, but we've also got to be attentive to, we've got to be strategizing about how we leverage our collective people power and push back against this consolidation that's targeting the other places in society where there is power to either enable or to check this regime. And so that is fundamentally the idea behind 1 Million Rising. We are going deep in what is authoritarianism, what are the pillars of power that can uphold or limit the power of a would-be authoritarian, and how do you develop sharp strategy to check or to influence those pillars, whether you are on the inside, whether you are on the outside. How do you learn about non-cooperation, the act of withdrawing your cooperation, withdrawing support, withdrawing the tactics and the tools that are allowing the regime to perpetuate its work? All of that, we're going in deep. The first session, we broke Zoom. Sorry about that. Sorry for everyone who couldn't get on. We are going to make sure that more folks can get on this time around. But we had over 150,000 people signed up, and more than 150,000 so far have seen the ultimate thing. We're going to be bringing back together later for our next session. We are going to be teaching you. We're going to be first going deeper on some of the original content, on some of the pillars, some analysis on non-cooperation, and then we're going to be training you to have that conversation locally, because fundamentally it is great that we have got a lot of people who are listening directly to Indivisible. We also know that you have friends and neighbors and coworkers and members of your Indivisible group who would probably benefit from having that same conversation, but maybe aren't tuned in already and might show up to somebody's house for a conversation, for a house party, for a brunch. We're going to try and get you prepared so that you can have those conversations within your own communities, and you can start to build out the plans to push back collectively wherever you are. We're going to be building out campaigns nationally that you can throw in on, and we're going to be giving you the tools to develop strategies to leverage your power locally. It's all coming up, so be sure to sign up. If you are not already RSVP'd, be sure to sign up, tune in. We have the link in the chat. We see this as a moment to get trained and get on board collectively with the kinds of strategies that we are going to use to push back against these institutions, to raise the cost of compliance, to create the conditions for courage across our society.
Leah, when is the next training on 1 Million Rising?
Let me check.
July
Actually,
30th.
July 30th. Okay, great.
Sorry.
July 30th. Sorry, I was like, is it July 29th or July 30th? And then I was
July 30th. We'll put it in.
Thank you. Way to call me out. You can
Sorry.
see me not actually successfully naming the date, and then you put me in there.
Sorry.
So
I did not mean to do that. Okay, so we will see y'all all on July 30th. Can't wait. And there's a link in the chat. We zoomed through this pretty good. We're at 40 minutes left. Should we get it into Q&A?
Let's do Q&A.
Okay, reminder people, we're just going to go through the chat, the Q&A that comes in the Q&A function. You can vote for it. Please do so. I see a lot of folks pointing out that PBS and NPR funding was also attacked in the chat. Yes, that is part and parcel. This is part of the plan. They want to attack alternative sources of truth. We should be bolstering those institutions that are standing up to Trump. We should be acting as a countervailing force against those that are buckling. So I see the comments. I agree. We're pissed about that as well. Let's get into it. Okay, first question we've got is from Karen, who asks, if the Epstein stuff brings Trump down, then what? Project 2025 no longer needs him to continue to damage our nation.
Oh, there's some
Look,
very optimistic assumptions embedded in there.
yeah, Leah, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So first, let me just say, generally speaking, we think this should be pursued. We think that folks should be really, it's very clear that this is administration is in the middle of a massive cover up related to Donald Trump's personal complicity with whatever is in the Epstein files. This was honestly pretty clear based on the publicly available information last year.
Yeah.
It is only more clear as more incredibly damning stuff is coming out. Credit to the Wall Street Journal, who I would not have necessarily named as like the top place to stand
Yeah.
up to Donald Trump, but they have been breaking some pretty troubling stories on this front. So, and most notably, House Republicans literally shut down votes rather than actually, or shut down business through September rather than allowing votes on releasing the Epstein file. So if it looks like a dog and barks like a dog, it's a dog. I don't know. Anyways, whatever. I'm not doing metaphors today. But the point being, this is very clearly a place where there is enormous
Duh.
political duck. It looks like a duck. This is very clearly a place where they sense massive vulnerability. They are attempting to do anything they can to distract from it, to shut it down. We should be continuing to demand accountability. Now, I also do want to just inject a kind of an overarching analysis. We've got like some data and some testing on how people understand what is happening here. And it's not like a clear like Donald Trump did something wrong and that's that situation. It's a situation where people are seeing this as one more example of how there is a set of rules for the elites that are rigged, in a rigged system and a set of rules for everybody else. And so I think it's important that we are focusing in on how this system is protecting Donald Trump, but I also think it's important that we make a connection to a broader anti rigged system argument here, because fundamentally what we are seeing is that this is a collective effort to protect and ensure impunity for elites, Donald Trump being one of the most central ones, and obviously the one that's causing them to squirm right now. But we want to make sure that we link it back to a bigger story of how power is being used to reinforce the powerful at the expense of everyone else.
Just want to say a couple things. One of our 2 and 4-year-olds' favorite games right now is I'm thinking of an animal, Leah, and
Yeah,
the 2-year-old is always thinking of a duck, always
always.
thinking of a duck. But I do want to point out, I saw people saying that they saw the billboards that we're putting up around Epstein. If people haven't seen it, we'll send it
Yeah.
around. There's some pretty great billboards that, thanks to grassroots funding around the country, they're going up in some cases right next to Republican congressional district offices in the states. This is something that's fracturing their coalition right now. So we should help fracture that coalition. MAGA members are losing faith in this administration. And if this is the thing that causes them to lose faith, great. I will take it. The most recent polling I've seen on this is 4% of Americans think we should not release the Epstein files. 4%. Props to Democrats in the House. Can I just say
Yeah.
that, Leah?
Mhm.
Props to Democrats in the House who have gone on offense in the last couple of weeks and have offered amendments that have made Republicans squirm so much that Mike Johnson, as you mentioned, had to shut down the House of Representatives. He has said, I am uncomfortable with this. We can't take these votes. Let's
And
just
get
go home
go.
and maybe people will forget this. Good job, Dems.
Yeah.
Good job. Seriously, like we push Dems a lot to go on offense. We want them to do things like this. They are doing this. If you have a member who has been on the forefront of this fight offering these amendments, give them a call out. Tell them that you really appreciate them fighting fire with fire and making the Republicans squirm on this. The Republicans should be asked about this. So very good to see.
Now, okay, sorry. I do want to go back to the actual question though, because that was just us
Oh,
spouting
yeah,
off
yeah.
on all of our thoughts. I don't think we need to speculate right now about if this brings him down. I think we should be real that there's the cult of personality around Trump has sustained quite a lot over the years, and while there is some fracturing right now, it's not at all clear that it's kind of like that you have the conditions with the level of misinformation with the right-wing media. I think what we're seeing is that this is a meaningful hit, but it's not a civil war,
Yeah,
right? And so I think that we should be pushing, we should be maximizing our advantage here, we should be making a
yeah.
connection to a broader argument about a rigged system. But I think we should be a little realistic about the fact that, we're not on the verge of Donald Trump resigning in disgrace anytime soon.
Very good point, Leah. Okay, Gene from Necessary Trouble in Georgia, an Indivisible group. Hey, Gene, asks, I think we should boycott Home Depot. According to Google, Home Depot stores are on private property. Home Depot has been allowing masked operatives to terrorize people on their property. I haven't heard much about this happening at Lowe's or other home improvement stores. Other note about Home Depot, their owner is just a serious right winger, big donor to right wingers in Congress and elsewhere. And Leah, you have seen, as I have seen, the terrorizing of immigrants and non-immigrants outside of Home Depots over the course of the last few months. This question of who and how do we boycott is a big part of the 1 million rising training. This is the economic pillar. This is how can we push businesses in an effective way. I tend to think Home Depot is a pretty good target. And it's one of the things that we've been talking about with partners of how we can put pressure on institutions. One of the good things about Home Depot is you've got alternatives. You do have alternative hardware stores that you can go to. You don't have to go to Home Depot in the same way that you don't have to go to Target. You can go somewhere else than Target. They do not have a monopoly on what they offer. But Leah, any specific thoughts on Home Depot as an immediate target, or the idea of
So
boycotts?
we together with friends, including SEIU, have been part of some actions outside of Home Depots. There have been a bunch of incidents. Folks will know very well. There's been a lot of incidents of day laborers, folks who are going to Home Depots to get work, getting picked up by ICE. This is part of a broader escalation where ICE, again, they're not looking for the people that Donald Trump kind of claim. Donald Trump claims this like, oh, we're going to go after the criminals, et cetera, et cetera. No, they're going after the places where they can find immigrants of any kind with the easiest targets possible. They are going to hospitals, they are going to churches, they are going to schools, they are going to places where people get work. That is what they have been doing. And so Home Depot has been one of those sites. My understanding is that it's primarily kind of the parking lots outside, but obviously you would want to see a company in a situation like that being forward leaning about actually, saying ICE is not welcome here, about pushing back, about being actually out in front. And we have not seen that from Home Depot. So point heard. We want to give you an overarching kind of set of targets and strategy rather than kind of saying boycott everyone all the time, but definitely appreciate the point that Home Depot is really up there.
I just want to underline, I think, Leah, you mentioned this earlier, coming out of the 1 million rising training. So we're going to do 3 trains. At the end of the third training, what we are leading into are a combination of big national campaigns that regardless of where you are, you can join, but then a framework for how you run these campaigns locally. And in a dream scenario, what we see are creative campaigns at the local level, some of which are not going to catch fire, but some will. And so we need that creativity, that entrepreneurialism, that activism at the local level to test out what works. What can we then scale up and do in other parts of the country because there was a particularly creative, effective Home Depot campaign maybe in your community. So we want to lead people along this path to doing both national campaigns but also creative local campaigns that we can then scale up. Maybe Home Depot comes out of this. Totally a possibility. Uh, Okay, that was Gene. Okay, Robert, though not surprised, I'm very upset that Colombia decided to pay quote unquote mob money in order to settle with the regime. What can we do to push back against this deal and more importantly, to encourage other universities to follow Harvard's path rather than Columbia's? I'm a Columbia alumnus, but do not have particularly strong ties to the university at this time. Uh, this is a hot topic of discussion internally right now, Robert. I think the danger, this isn't just about Colombia, to your point. Colombia has made this deal now. I suspect there are going to be further shenanigans from the administration that come. I mean, that Trump can at any point say, Colombia is not actually doing what I really want, which is XYZ. And Columbia's going to have to respond to that. But this is really about the other universities because every institution in this moment is nervous that they're going to be targeted. They are nervous that Trump is going to come after them, freeze their funding, in some way attack them, embroil them in legal battles that are very costly. So what we need is for those institutions understanding, if I stand up, people are standing up behind me. If I fight back, there are people fighting back with me.
Yeah.
And if I capitulate, it's not just as easy as signing a deal with Trump. I'm going to get shit for this.
Yeah.
My reputation is going to be damaged. People aren't going to want to apply to my university as much. So you could think of a whole set of tactics that would do that. They could be digital tactics around social media. They could be statements from there are a handful of members of Congress who have university degrees from Columbia University. You could imagine a campaign at high school saying, "Don't go to Coward University, apply somewhere else." You could imagine a lot of kinds of tactics that increase the cost of capitulation. That is where my head is now. there is not yet I wish I could say, and we're all going to
Yeah.
do X now in response to Columbia. This is the purpose of the 1 million rising training, is to look at, okay, we need a framework for institution is considering buckling or has buckled. What is the immediate response that we all commit to so that we can then amp up the stakes for other folks who are considering buckling to this
Yeah.
administration?
I think and just to answer really specifically to this person who's like, I'm a Columbia alumni, but I'm not particularly connected. This might be a time to get back connected. Do you have an alumni association? Do they
Yes,
have
yes,
upcoming elections? Is there a slate of people who are running to say this is a disgrace? Have you considered going to your next reunion and wearing a giant sign, or, wearing a t-shirt that says this is what, a message about what is happening? Have you considered just making yourself a big pain in the ass for your administration? Because actually that is what is going to be needed right
yes,
now. Like there are a lot of different ways. The basic thing is that Columbia has made a calculation that it will be easier for them to give into
yeah,
the administration than to sustain the costs of an ongoing fight with the Trump administration. And our job collectively, if we are a stakeholder within Columbia, is to prove that that was wrong.
yes.
And our job externally, if we are not a stakeholder in Columbia, is to take our own institutions and ensure that our own institutions are looking at Columbia and they're like, oh, I don't want that. I gotta stay strong in the fight. I gotta be part of the collective defense pact here. I've got to stand up because there are going to be people behind me.
I would be thrilled if one of the things that comes out of 1 Million Rising are a series of cool, creative, collective actions focused on universities using alum power to
Yep.
do that. Um, and this is just, I'm sorry, we keep on, it's like an infomercial, 1 Million Rising, 1 Million Rising. We keep on coming back to it. But the reason is traditionally we have focused on elected officials. And frankly, it's relatively easy to push elected officials. Call them, show up at their district office, register voters to defeat them and endorse other candidates. That's somewhat straightforward. The reason why we're doing these intense trainings is because this is more complex, but there are still powerful targets
Yeah.
that we collectively can move. So
Yeah.
we want to train people on the way that we do this, the
Right.
lessons learned around the world and historically for what works, and then let loose. We are not currently in the position where we can say this is the campaign, but gosh, the last training is next month, so we're getting there, and we're hoping to get there pretty quickly. Great question, Robert. Thank you for it. Molly asks, I just received a text that the House Republicans are subpoenaing Act Blue, the fundraising arm for the Democratic Party. How likely is it that Act Blue could be shut down? It's not just the Democratic Party. Indivisible raises money through Act Blue. Local Indivisible groups raise money through Act Blue. There are 800 or so that do that. And so there are outside groups, there are candidates, there are the Democratic Party itself. Act Blue is the grassroots funding arm for much of what we do and much of what many politicians on the Democratic side do. Leah, do you want to speak? I guess what I would say is I think Act Blue's ED is not capitulating.
Yeah.
What I've seen is a forceful response that they shall not be capitulating and they're going to fight back. So we don't have a capitulation problem with Act
Yeah.
Blue. It's no surprise to me that the House Republicans are scared because Dems and Dim-aligned groups and pro-democracy groups are raising a boatload of money from people around the country to fight back against this administration. They understand it's a threat right now.
Yeah. What I would say there too is, we're talking about anticipatory obedience. And part of the way that something like this, that they want something like this to work is they say, we're going after Act Blue. And then all of us in a panic pull out of Act Blue. And we're like,
Mm,
oh crap, we gotta run away. And we're
yeah.
not doing that, right? Like we are continuing to be invested in Act Blue. We are standing behind Act Blue. We kind of have a collective ecosystem commitment to not freaking out, right? And so I think we should take it seriously and we should raise the alarm, but we also need to be collectively standing in support and like actually behaving as if this is an outrageous, insane thing that they are trying to do that they have absolutely no legal grounds for. And we're not going to act like they're going to get it just because they are moving forward.
Yep. Indeed. Okay, Mary asks, I keep hearing that quote unquote Dems aren't getting their messages out on alternative media and that Republicans are cleaning their clock. I do Dimcast and post to amplify as much as possible on Facebook, IG, Blue Sky, TikTok. I've subscribed to as many liberal channels on YouTube that I can think of. What more can I do?
This is really interesting.
Yeah,
So let me
please.
let me just say, I think our biggest gap, we do have like a difference in the overall maturity of the Democratic influencer ecosystem and kind of the left to liberal ecosystem. The what's the ongoing thing? Like, why can't the left have a Joe Rogan, et cetera. But we also have often like the place where I think there's a bigger gap is around penetration into places that aren't particularly political, right? Because a lot of the stuff that really hurts us is when we're not getting our message out successfully to people who don't care very much about politics. And so,
Mm,
totally good for you to be subscribed and to be like regularly paying attention to all of these pieces. Great for you to be posting your own messaging. We've actually just launched a super cool tool for this, Sosha, and we'll pop a link in the chat. But it's basically like a click to post thing that allows you to post kind of the most relevant and alarming messages about what Trump is doing to your social. So we're all in on that. And also, I think in the long term, some of it's going to be about like non-political spaces and encouraging them to feature and engage with political content. So I would say, if you're on TikTok and you're on Book Talk and you're on Mom Talk, these are real things. If you're it's the content for moms, etc. And someone starts talking about healthcare, you should be in their chat, in their comments, being like, thank you for talking about this. Because all of these people, they're making decisions about what they're actually going to feature and what they're going to lean in on based on the kind of response they get. What goes viral, what gets attention. If more of those folks see that them speaking out against ICE goes viral, if they see that them talking about Medicaid cuts and the impact that is going to have on disability communities, folks with disabilities goes viral, that is the kind of stuff they will lean into. So think about not just like being in the progressive and political ecosystem, but how do you actually look at the places where there's a political intersection and how do you support and amplify those folks when they start to get more political?
hmm I'm going to say three things. One of the most exciting areas of development of our program work for Indivisible is this increased time, energy, money, effort, investment into new media, new emerging media platforms. I think if you've been watching us over the last 6 months, you've probably seen us on a lot of Substack Lives. You've seen us on the Contrarian, Jen Rubin's operation. You've seen us on Midas Touch a lot. This is intentional, and it's new. I think if you followed Indivisible for years, you probably got used to seeing us on great folks like Rachel Maddow or in the Washington Post or the New Yorker or New York Times. And we're still doing some of that, but it's not all of the way that we're trying to get the message out. We are actively now engaged in the creator space, trying to reach people not just who are political junkies or people who have always watched a Maddow or CNN. We're trying to get to people who aren't in these circles because we think that is really key for getting the word out. Now, the second thing I'd say is we did this a lot for No King's Day. Headed into No King's Day, we knew that hands off was incredible. We had 1.5 million-ish people who showed up, but we needed to expand. We needed to reach different audiences, and so we worked a lot with creators in a way we never had before. And I wouldn't just say our work there transformed it and got tons of new people and diversified the audiences and got younger people out, but I think that was a part of it. We got a ton of creator content out there heading into No King's Day. Some of this was paid, a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it was just we were able to get the content to creators and they wanted to cover it. They just hadn't been reached out to by folks and been given the content to cover. I think there's a lot of exciting work to do there, and we're actively trying to build in this area. Shout out to Antonio Ariana, who's now leading that for Indivisible. And the third thing that I would say is I think when we talk about new and emerging spaces and creator spaces, sometimes people talk about the big Midas touch or the contrarian or this big influencer, and that is part of it. And we should be supporting those. But what we have found going into this space is some of the most influential people in the creator and influencer space are not big mega influencers. They're what's known as micro influencers. They've got a few thousand followers, but they're hyper localized and they've built up a really strong following. So when they voice an opinion on something, while they're not reaching as many people, the people they are reaching have a lot of they convince those people that, oh, I should actually follow this person's opinion. And one source of micro influencers are indivisible groups themselves. There are 2,365 indivisible groups spread across every all but I think three congressional districts in the country. So a place that I'm pretty excited to dig in is how can we help indivisible groups be micro influencers and reach out to their community, not just to show up physically in person, but to be sources for truth and understanding about what's happening in the world. So stay tuned. I think this is an important way that we can help get the pro-democracy message out so that we don't have our clocks cleaned going forward on this front. Okay, Mary from Indivisible Southern Delaware. Hey, Mary. Says, I feel that ensuring voting rights and preventing voter intimidation needs to be priorities now. What can we do to ensure Democrats will be able to get out to vote and help them meet any new voting restrictions in red states by the time of the midterms? I think we
Yeah.
need to be prepared for more voter restrictions based on the way the Supreme Court has been ruling in Trump's favor. True. Also, what are our rights to monitor voting in red states and what can be done in states where election deniers have been given authority in election process?
There's a lot here.
There's a lot
There's a
here.
lot here.
You've got some thoughts, I've got some thoughts. You go.
Yeah, okay. So first off, I think very, very correct to be worried about all of this. We are hearing rumors that there is a forthcoming executive order on voting rights that is is in development and could be dropping sometime in the next month or so. Absolutely concerned about this, especially given the demonstrations that we've seen over the last couple of months with the court functionally rubber stamping a large number of increasingly authoritarian actions and infringements. And so very much like in agreement that this is an incredibly worrying process that is getting worse. In terms of what we can do about it, a lot of the answers are going to be specific to your state and to your locality and to the conditions that are on the ground and to supporting people who are organizing to push back against the worst possible versions of this. Now, we've had a lot of people in the Indivisible movement who have been organized to push back against local election deniers, against people who have taken control of, the clerk's office or the board of elections, who are part of the MAGA movement and who've been organizing against them, both to kind of check them and expose what they are doing and to ultimately get them out of office. I'm thinking of out in 2024. I was out in Nevada with, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget their amazing name.
Prickly Bear?
Prickly Pears,
Ah, the
the Prickly
prickly
Pears,
bears.
the prom. There we go. And I've got the t-shirt too. It's an amazing
It's a
t-shirt.
great t-shirt.
And they were partnering with All Voting is Local on a campaign specifically around the fact that they had election deniers on their board who were trying to mess with the local, voting rights locally. That is the kind of partnership that we're going to be trying to encourage folks to replicate in this period, because fundamentally we want to make sure that where we have got local energy and organization, we're tightly linked up with people who are monitoring the conditions for voting rights, monitoring the risk of election sabotage, and raising the alarm well in advance, winning local elections where we can, right? Because fundamentally, there are a lot of off-year elections between now and 2026, and we've got to actually kind of fill as much as we can the seats of the people who are going to be making those decisions at the state and local level. Now, because of incredible work by this movement, we are fortunate that we actually control a bunch of the governorships, attorney general roles in key states
Yep.
that are going to be really important for how the election unfolds in 2026. That doesn't mean we have protection against everything, but it does mean that we have, frankly, a little more leverage than we had even in 2018 or 2020. So I think it's going to be organizing locally, partnering nationally with people who are monitoring this full time so that we're getting the alerts out to the places where we can push back, and trying to push back against any national legislation or any national actions, but recognizing that, a lot of that is going to have to be case by case and pushing on each individual piece as we come.
The thing that I wanted to go on, and I didn't see this in the chat as much, and I hope people are tracking it. I was considering writing about this for the next newsletter, and we'll see what happens between now and Monday. It's always hard to tell. I usually write those on Sunday. Uh, are people tracking what is happening in Texas right now? I wonder if I'm only tracking this because I'm a Texan
Yeah.
and I went through the last mid-year redistricting. This is scary stuff, y'all. And it's not coming out of nowhere. So earlier this year, there was a horrific flood in Texas, killed dozens of children and families, in no small part because of just rampant mismanagement of the warning systems and the response systems by the Texas government and by FEMA and the Trump administration. And you could imagine in response to that, the Texas Republicans who have ruled the state for decades being contrite, trying to rush aid to the families that were affected, trying to rush fixes to the systems that failed. And it is true that the government has rushed to respond. Uh, that is not what they have responded to do. They are instead initiating a mid-decade gerrymander. They are proposing new congressional maps. That because Donald Trump is worried about a blue wave coming next year, and he doesn't want Texans to have actual free and fair elections. He wants to squeeze out more Republican districts out of Texas. And so, I was a member, I was a staffer for a member of Congress in Texas when Tom DeLay tried to do the same thing about 20 years ago. He then, as they now, aren't trying to protect the right to vote. They're not just pursuing right-wing policies. They are worried that there is going to be voter backlash to right-wing policies and governance. And so then they are now rigging the rules. This is bad for Texas, but it's bad for the entire country because they're trying to affect the National Congress and who controls the National Congress. So I've been on calls this week trying to work with the local organizers to put pressure in Texas to raise the alarm that this is what Texas Republicans are seeking to do. But I don't think this just comes down to Texas. Look, Texas is run by right-wing wackos. That's who controls the state government. Greg Abbott and the Texas state legislature, they want racist partisan districts so they don't actually have to compete for votes. That's what they want. It's going to be tough to put pressure on them. Maybe we can fight it out in the courts. There's some chance there. We have to raise the alarm. That's part of what we're trying to do in Texas. But Texas doesn't have all the cards, y'all.
Yeah.
There are 15 Democratic trifecta states out there. There's California, there's New Jersey, there's New York, there's Illinois. They all have a Democratic governor. They all have a Democratic state legislature. They can all do a mid-decade redistricting plan if they want. They can all squeeze more Democratic seats out of their congressional delegation. I strongly oppose gerrymandering. We fought for years to pass a gerrymandering ban and to overcome Republican opposition. The Republicans won. The Republicans won. We do not have a national gerrymandering ban. And I just think we'd be stupid to fight for our democracy with one hand behind our back. So, in addition to fighting back in Texas as best we can, if you are in a blue state where there is a Democratic governor and there is a Democratic state legislature, and you've got a lot of congressional districts in that state, you should be pushing your governor and state legislators to start coming up with plans for how can we redistrict? Because if Texas is going to mess with the rest of the country, we can't just sit back and take it. If the Republicans there are going to rig the system, we need to fight fire with fire. And we shouldn't wait and complain from the sidelines. Let's get going. Let's start putting these plans into action because they aren't going to stop because we ask nicely. They'll stop because they see that they lose if they move forward with us.
That's right. And I'll just note the chat is noting that Gavin Newsom is out there
Yes.
threatening to do this. And you know what? This is another week of you have to hand it to Gavin Newsom after a pretty rough start this year.
That's right.
That would mostly focused on a podcast for some reason. He's been out there. He has been pushing back on a different level recently. And frankly, he's the kind of guy who needs to see positive reinforcement
Yes.
and needs
Yeah.
to really feel like this is working out for me to continue to be brave. So if you got some leverage there, use it.
It's a weird dynamic right now because I have not historically been a huge fan of Gavin Newsom, and I think in the last few weeks slash couple months he's been performing quite well going on offense. I have been a pretty big fan of JB Pritzker. I did
Yes.
not think his responses to this were very impressive. He kind of pushed aside the idea that he might do this. So again, none of this is set in stone. They're all politicians. They're trying to see which way the wind blows. They're trying to see where the support is. Show Newsom some love. Show Pritzker a little bit of encouragement. There's an active gubernatorial fight in New York. I don't know where they stand on this issue. That would be an interesting thing to ask. And maybe your support for the governorship of New York depends on their answer to this question. We can push our Democrats to go on offense, but we got to show them the way. They're looking for where they can go in order to get support. Let's show them. Let's show them. We'll have more on this to come. This is early days, but I think there's a real opportunity here. We've got Lee who asks, what can we do to try to make Democrats in Congress use their rare leverage in the upcoming budget face-off to at least appear stronger? The strategic failure in March to have a unified plan on the CR has only left the Democrats in a weaker position. You are just we are on the same page, Lee. They can't count on Epstein to help them on every front, and it feels like they will just run with that stroke of luck. Leah, if you let me talk about this, I will never stop talking.
I want you to do it. I want you to talk.
You want me to do this?
I know, I do.
Oh my gosh.
Not prospectively, not retroactively.
Well, just a little retroactively.
Okay,
Here's something I'm proud about Indivisible. We don't just talk the talk. We walk the walk. We strongly supported the unions, the good government advocates, the litigators who said, do not agree to this Republican funding bill in March. We were out there, we were backing up Democratic leaders in the House who said, yep, we're going to hold strong. We're not going to give the Republicans what they want. We're not just going to give in to Trump. And we thought we were working with the Democrats in the Senate to do the same. Then Schumer caved. Schumer caved. He gave the votes to the Republicans, and this one place of leverage we had in the first quarter was frittered away. We just lost it. The weekend after that, we held an emergency meeting of Indivisible leaders from across the country. I believe 1,300 joined, and 91 or 92% voted on that call to call for Chuck Schumer to step down from Democratic leadership because he had betrayed his constituents and he had failed to live up to his role as the Democratic leader in the Senate. That is our position. We need Democrats who fight back. We are not just going to blindly support Democrats who roll over and play dead. Now, he is still Democratic minority leader. He's the Senate minority leader. He's the leader of the Dems in the Senate. He has felt the pressure, and Democrats felt the pressure in March. And so Lee is asking a good question. Are they going to fight back now? We should be reminding them of the overwhelming pushback that came after they caved the last time and the expectation that if you want to be a Democrat headed in to 2026 and 2027, our expectation is you do not give up our leverage. We should be pushing them to fight fire with fire. We should be pushing them to make very clear demands. And if they don't move forward and fight the way we want them to fight, there's a primary season coming up. They are going to be asking for our votes. They don't own their seat. They depend on us to get reelected. This is a good test case for are the Dems going to fight back? And we should be rallying around those who are saying that we should fight back. And I don't care if they voted the right way at every other point. If they're with us now, welcome them into the coalition. If Chuck Schumer switches sides and suddenly find back, great. We should be rallying behind him when he does that. This is politics. There are no permanent friends and allies. There are no permanent enemies. There are temporary allies in the fight that we're in. And right now, we should see who's on our side and rally around him.
Yeah. And lead to like the very specific question of kind of like, what are we doing to try to make Democrats use their leverage? This is like the same stage in January and February of last time where people had identified this as a leverage point and there was some incredibly limited effort to build a plan and a strategy and align people around it. And that just didn't really happen in March, right? It was like
Yeah.
by the time we were in the final stages of this, it was just a mess. There was no plan. There had been no infrastructure or preparation laid for what would happen if there was a shutdown. And part of the way that they kind of like ended up backing into this outcome was just by being like, well, we're not prepared, so we can't do it. So what I would say right now is you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have like the full list of concessions that we should be asking, but you should be raising the temperature on your Democrats and saying, hey, this is your only point of leverage. Do not tell me, do not come to me in 2 months and say that you did not make a plan and you did not put it into action here, because this is our chance to actually check some of the gross abuses that we are seeing. And we need to see you fighting and we need to see you using it. We don't have to define everything about that right now. It's actually their job to come up with a plan here. It's our job to tell them what we want to see.
Oh, Lee, you were better than me on that. You should have just come.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric asks, this is a good question that we get sometimes. And so I think we should just answer directly. It's basically about Indivisible's commitment to nonviolent, peaceful opposition. So
I'm going to ask you, yeah, you don't need to read the whole
I
thing.
won't
It's
read
a
the whole
long.
thing, but you're basically asking, are we like,
Is
is
our
there a
commitment.
breaking point? Like, are we considering departing from this fundamental norm that Indivisible's embraced basically since our founding? Leah, I just talked a
Yeah.
lot. Do you want to cover it?
Yeah. So short answer is we are fully and permanently committed to strategic nonviolence. And that is a strategic commitment and a moral commitment. It is based on an enormous amount of deep research and understanding that nonviolent social movements are more successful and are more likely to create the conditions for long-term social change and for greater flourishing of democracy than anything else. And frankly, are more likely to pull in the kinds of mass movement that we are going to need in this moment to oppose authoritarianism. And so it is a full and absolute commitment on our part.
That's right. That's right. I do want to It is a scary time, though. I think what you're highlighting here is that we've seen the violence from the other side.
Yeah.
We see that they are scared of nonviolent, peaceful protests. They are scared of people organizing, and in some cases, they respond to that with violence. And I wish I could tell you that, that's not true, or you don't need to worry about that. We have certainly seen that directed in our direction. We have seen indivisible groups grapple with this as well. And it's one of the things that makes this moment very hard. And it's also one of the things that makes me so proud to be part of this movement. A lot of people are seeing the real risks all around the country. And the easy thing to do would be to say, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to step up. And instead, what we see are millions of people around the country seeing this scary authoritarian behavior and these goons across the country threatening. And they're standing up and they're saying, no, I'm going to organize. I'm going to organize for my community, for my family, for my democracy. And I'm going to do it while committed to the principles of peaceful, nonviolent resistance. And I believe that's what we need. And seeing other people around the country choose to take on that risk,
Yeah.
I it's inspiring. It's honestly inspiring.
I also just want to call back, like many of us were out last week on John Lewis, on the anniversary of
Yeah.
John Lewis's death. We were out there for Good Trouble Lives On. And if you haven't dived deep
gosh.
into the story of John Lewis, into the story of the younger generation of the civil rights movement, I really recommend it. And it's just incredible because one of the things that you get when you're really going into it is just the depth of the principle and the commitment to strategic nonviolence. The understanding that that is not like a soft decision, it is a decision to remain committed to nonviolence in order to expose the cruelty and the rapaciousness and the fundamental violence necessary to maintain oppression. It's not a soft commitment; it's a deep commitment. And so I would encourage folks who are thinking about this to like dive deeper into our own history, right? Because we talk about movements from all around the country, but part of what I hope we all took from the John Lewis Day is that this country is only a relatively new democracy, right? Like we have had a democracy in which people are fully enfranchised and able to vote for less than 70 years at this point. Like 70 years. Okay, I'm trying to do math in my head at the same time. And and we are actually going to need to take inspiration from and learn lessons from the organizing that has come before us that has challenged extraordinarily, authoritarian regimes within our own country.
Leah, there's a book that you have read that I've not read on Lewis and Nash and others.
The Children by John Halberstam is very good. I like that if
The
you're
Children,
looking
that's
for
what
just kind of a
we were
quick
just talking about.
overview. Yeah,
So The Children.
like great overview of the Freedom Riders, extraordinary stuff.
Great. Okay. Next question from Vernon. Should Indivisible be leading a postcard writing campaign to send postcards to people in Republican districts, urging them to call their congressmen, women to demand that Republicans stop the cover-up and release all the Epstein files? Oh, Indivisible, Howard County, Hoco County, Indivisible, in Maryland, nearby.
Yeah. So can I
go
take
for
that
it.
one? Okay.
Go for it.
So I would like to kind of offer it's an interesting question because it blends a couple of different tactics, and I'd like to hone in on like why we do certain tactics in support of certain strategies. So right now we're doing this billboard campaign in districts of Republicans who have been aggressively attempting to like not vote on the Epstein or voting against releasing the Epstein files. And the basic idea there is we're not actually trying to really conduct a campaign to win this fight by getting them to vote to release them. We are trying to make sure that people understand the hypocrisy of what they are doing, right? Like it would be great if they voted to release the Epstein files, but fundamentally what we have here is a story of elite capture. What we have here is a story of elite impunity. What we have here is a story of the entire Republican Party squatting up to protect Donald Trump from what they know is going to be something real freaking horrifying. And so we're doing tactics that are designed to get that in front of as many people as possible rather than to move the votes of individual members of Congress. We would like to move their votes, but what we really want is for as many people as possible to understand what's happening. And so we're doing billboards which reach a mass population rather than the things that we would do if we were trying to say win a legislative fight, right? Like when we've been in the heat of trying to stop the one big beautiful bill, what we do is we've got phone banks. We are calling constituents in North Carolina. We are saying, call Tom Tillis, tell him to vote against it. That is how we try to kill that bill. Here, what we want is for as many people as possible to understand the hypocrisy.
Yep. I think we've got time for a couple more. Dee Dee asked, and Lee, you were just talking to me about this, and it comes up regularly. We need to have a designated day that there is a general strike where no one goes to work. You want
I'm good.
No one goes to work or buys anything, and everyone is out protesting. Are you going to make a call for that day? General
Um,
strike.
short answer is that is one of the kinds of tactics that people should be considering, and also currently, not right now. Now we've seen different versions of this that are comparable, right? A Day Without an Immigrant, I think, is a great example of an effort that demonstrates the collective power and presence of immigrants in our society and kind of demonstrates how disruptive it is if they are not present for a day. I think that this is not a tactic that we would take off the table for the longer term. But right now, what we want to focus on is building the kind of collective power and building the movement and building the size of our movement such that if we call for something like that, it is very big and it is very noticeable.
I mean, I would go a step further and say I think that's where we're headed. Ultimately, I think what we're going to need is mass demonstrations of action like that, and we're just not there yet. We had
Yeah.
about 5 to 6 million people on a 1 day massive historic protest on No King's Day. That's incredible. The number that we all have in our head is what we covered with Erica Chenoweth last week. 3.5% of the population, around 11 million Americans, not just showing up 1 day, but showing up in a persistent manner. That's what you need in order to beat back authoritarian overreach. Our theory for how we get there, our theory is not we push the general strike button and we solve this. That doesn't exist. If we had it, I'd be hitting the general strike button. We don't have that button. Instead, we build the muscle. We show up on hands off. We show up on May Day. We show up on No King's Day. We show up on John Lewis Day. We show up on Labor Day coming up. We show up after that. We show up with our partners to pull out new populations, and we build that muscle. And as we build that muscle, that pulls us in the direction of, okay, we actually have the strength we need to push back in some sort of general strike way. But general strikes are not just a let's call the day. They're complex
Yeah.
activities. You need to, how are people going to feed their families? How are people going to sustain themselves in their work? How are people not going to lose their jobs? How are you going to support populations to participate? That there's infrastructure that you need to develop around this. So I am very, very open to the idea that this is where we're all headed, especially if things continue down the path that we're seeing right now. And we have reason to believe with the ICE funding coming down the pike that we are going to see more escalations from the administration terrorizing not just immigrant communities, but peaceful organizers as well. So I think, unfortunately, as things get worse, more people will come and try to organize with us. Our goal right now is to soak up as much of that energy as possible, not to add to some email list, but to funnel them into productive on the ground organizing, which is why you'll see from the 1 million rising trains our ask coming out of the 1 million rising training isn't, text us like donate $3 to Indivisible or sign this online petition or whatever. Like that's not it. It is get involved in your local community and run a productive campaign that's targeted for your community. That's why you see us operating in that way, because we believe that's the way we pull more and more people in. We're going to answer one more question from Caldwell's Indivisible, but just wanted to re-up. We're going to have a survey after this, and I want you to tell us you're spending too much time on the intro, or it would be great if you could have this speaker, because it was great to have Erica Chenoweth, but we could have that politician or this thinker, or more slides. We want more deep training on some topic. Tell it. Like really, we don't want to just. I mean, we're to some extent we're shooting from the hip here. To some extent, we're trying to like gauge where the interest is in the chat, but surveys actually really do help us. We do read through them. We're not just asking you for the sake of asking you. We won't. We try to make it a practice. We don't ask questions that we're not interested in the answers to. We don't just try to engage you with BS questions. So please do take a look at the surveys because we'll use this to feed into the next sessions. Leah, anything on that before we go to the next question? Alrighty, last question from Kin from Caldwell's Indivisible. The family's first event on July 26th is coming so soon after Good Trouble national action, and information regarding the event arrived so late that it was problematic to properly organize another event for this Saturday. At the same time, we're trying to implement 1 million rising and set up trainings. Bottom line, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and there are a lot of options for folks to participate in. Just ending what can be done to provide more notice of upcoming national actions and or put a bit more time/space between them. Just want to call out, Ken, thank you for asking a critical question. We welcome this. We're not going to get everything right, and the balance is not always going to be perfect. So just want to plus one, like,
Yeah.
this kind of feedback is useful. Leah, on timing of the
Yeah.
various things happening, on coalition efforts,
Yeah.
thoughts on staging and
Yeah.
fitting everything in.
Yeah. So first, I just want to say very much feel and hear you. The same experiences that you have as an indivisible group,
Yes.
we have on our own team. So I hope you will trust, first of all, that when you're like, wow, there are too many things, we're trying to hold a lot, we're actually going through some version of the same thing,
Mm,
usually internally as well. Um, this is an incredibly challenging time because it is just overwhelming, right? The sheer scope and scale of the harm, the speed at which it is unfolding, the fact that you are seeing, the legislative attacks and the administrative attacks and the local attacks and the deployment of the National Guard and all of the different ways in which they are, as we talked about, sprinting to consolidate power and to use it against us. It can really feel very easy to be like, I'm doing everything I can and I'm not doing enough. And so the first thing that I would say just to every indivisible group is one, you want to develop and build out a leadership team so that no individual person is being asked to hold all of those things. You want to have as much as possible, a deeper leadership bench. You want to have somebody who's holding volunteering for this event, somebody who's holding the community trainings as much as you can, trying to like delegate, give different people the baton, take some time to rest for yourself. It's okay to not do everything.
yeah.
It's really okay to not do everything.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't feel like that, but I really do want to encourage you. The movement needs you, but it does not need all of you every minute, every second of the day.
Yeah.
So I do just want to say that. Um, we do try to like sync up and coordinate events across the movement. We're not always going to be able to land the things just because so much is happening, right? There was kind of a collective need identified to get on the books and a moment of accountability around the GOP bill, a moment to talk about the impact of these Medicaid cuts and the attacks on families, and folks wanted to have that very reasonably. We all collectively wanted to have that pretty shortly after the bill passage, which meant that there's like a little bit more overlap than usual. We're really conscious of that. I guess what I would just say is we really encourage people to think about and pace what is right for you and your group. And we understand that you can't be all in on everything all the time. That is normal.
Just want to, maybe I'll end with a quote from an Indivisible group, a leader that it's always stuck with me, talking about how she had taken a break and then come back, and it was the choir keeps singing when one of us takes a breath.
Right.
There's a big choir out there, 2,635 Indivisible groups everywhere. Just to underline what Leah said, you don't have to participate in every single thing out there. The number one thing is we need you in this movement. So take a breath. If you need a breath, we'll keep singing.
Yeah.
And with that, thanks everybody. We went a little bit over. Sorry for that, but we will see you next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. As usual, great conversation here. Please again fill out that survey. Let us know what you want. Maybe we'll get some new guest folks to join us for the next discussion. Welcome your thoughts on whether we should do that and who it should be or the topics we should cover. And until then, that's the plan.
Are we going to end like that every
Yeah,
time?
maybe we'll say that's the
Oh,
plan.
gosh.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll workshop that. Okay.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye,
y'all.
y'all.
See you next week.